you want to see them?
What?
I said the question is, did you want to see them?
Oh, yeah.
All right, all right.
All right, I think I'm ready to roll. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to have a little bit different order. We're going to do the layout tour first. Don Fowler's Southern Pacific Mojave Division and N scale, the layout tour. Then we're going to segue to show and tells in the middle, and then we're going to go back to Don. He wants to do it again, but he's going to instead of a layout tour, he's going to highlight the operations on the Mojave Division and how easy that can be to make it fun to do operations without it being so complicated and so much paperwork. So without any further ado, I will introduce Don to do his layout tour. Are you ready, Don?
I think so.
Okay.
Want me to go ahead and share my screen?
Go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. How's everybody doing today? I hope you're doing
great, Don. How are you?
excellent. I know a lot of you have been to my house and visited my layout. And this might show you some of the progress I've been making over the last year. And I tried to do something different. I put some shots in of progressive construction because a lot of us like to see how something was made, not just the finished product. And so I thought that might be enjoyable. There, I think we're set now. So just a little bit about me. I started model railroading with my dad when I was 4 years old in 1961. He worked for the Southern Pacific, and so that's my favorite road, of course. Spent a lot of time in and around that railroad. The layout kind of reflects my rail fanning years in my teen years and later, but that's where I really got a flavor for going out and actually seeing the area that I'm modeling. And so just a little bit about the layout. Everybody see this okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. I retired in March of 2015, and I had a completed layout, believe it or not, in my garage. It's a 2-car garage, and I was tired of it, so I tore it all out, and I started a new one in October of that year. Modeling an N scale. The size of the room is 20 by 22. I modeled the locale from Los Angeles to Bakersfield from 75 to 95. I've got 388 feet of main line. I really wanted a long main line so I could run trains and have space between the towns. I designed the layout on the Coast Starlight in the lounge car on a trip up to Seattle. And as I was doodling and designing, several other modelers came over and sat with me that happened to be sitting on the train at the same time. It's kind of neat. Minimum radius is 20 inches. Minimum turnouts are number 5, 7s on the main, and some 10s. 2% grades maximum. Wrench work is open grid. My deck heights, the lower level is 45 inches and the upper is 61. I use Midwest cork and Atlas Code 55 throughout. And the scenery ground cover is mostly plaster cloth over foam. The backdrops came from Backdrop Junction, and then I painted a little bit as well. And I'm using Digitrax. So it kind of gives you a little bit about the layout. This is the upper level of the layout. This is the Bakersfield area up here. I'm modeling with the turntable in place. I thought it'd be fun to have a turntable operating, but the area that the time period that I modeled, the roundhouse was gone, so I'm not modeling the roundhouse itself. This Bakersfield yard is really more of a staging yard for trains. I can store 6 nice sized trains easily in that yard. And if you follow the red line that goes all the way around it, that's a reverse loop. Goes all the way down, and that's the end of the reverse loop right there. And that's my version of Waylong. A couple of tunnels through there, and then we come into the town at Tehachapi. We've got some industries there. And then we start kind coming down the hill, coming down through Mojave, and then we'll go from here to the lower level. We continue on the lower level, and this is what some people call a herniated helix. I'm not fond of those tight little helixes, so I made one on a peninsula, just gain about a foot of elevation there. We come out of Palmdale and come through Canyon, and we get back down into the LA basin, and we're at the West Colton arrival and departure tracks. I combine them into the same location. I've got a petroleum facility up here, just like on the prototype. I've got a diesel service facility here. This is the working hump yard. We've got a hump over here, and we actually roll the cars into it. And then an intermodal yard over here that represents the ICTF that SP used to have, now it's UPs. I built that because it's really hard for me to take those articulated double stacks on and off the layout. I wanted a place to park them. So it just made sense to put that in there. I forgot to mention that I also have a vehicle transfer facility here. I accidentally double ordered on auto racks, and I found some really great brass kits of unloading ramps and truck trailers for autos. And so that's going to be a neat area when it's finished there. The yard design at West Colton parallels, kind of mirrors the prototype in theory. Come into the hump, the power leaves and goes down to the service area. The trains are shoved up over the hump and into respective classification tracks. Then a trim switcher pulls them down into the departure yard. Power comes out, hooks up, and takes off. And so it kind of parallels what the prototype is. When I was young, I was always in a hurry to build my layout, and I didn't spend a lot of time on room prep. And as we get older, I think everybody will agree that room prep is important. You want to be comfortable in that room you're going to be spending a lot of time in. So when I tore the old layout out, I repainted. I had not finished off all the walls, so they're all drywalled and insulated. Drop ceiling with lights, night lighting as well. Air conditioning and a new carpet. Sliding doors in front of the HVAC and washer dryer area. That's the door that leads into the house over here. And then looking the other way, I wanted the room to be functional in case we ever moved. So I had them put in a brand new garage door that's got the heavy insulation on it, because my house faces west, so it gets a little warm in the summer. So, but that's the room before we get rolling. And of course, put in a workbench. It helped define the elevation for the layout, because I needed to have chairs low enough that I could bend my knees at 90 degrees and sit there and work. And then ample room not to hit my head in the upper level to have clearance as well. So that kind of helped define the elevation. On the bench, I've got a TV and my computer and stereo off to the side. And so I've got everything I need out there if my wife decides to lock me out there. So I'm good. This is down on the other end. This is a rolling tool chest, comes out, get all my tools when I need to. There's another view of the workbench with some of the layout built there on top of it. It's worked out pretty well. And then I keep all my DVDs and books and everything out there as well. And I found those shelves. I think I found them at Office Depot on sale, and they fit in there just perfect. And then I just kind of walled it in around it, and did the same thing over here. It's a little escape hatch in case you need to get out. That's the only duck under on the layout. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. And then this is just plywood framing. It kind of helps stabilize the layout when it's out in the middle of the room. The other bench work is a box frame, and then it's bolted to the wall. It's supported on 2x4s. I can climb on it if I need to, and have. And then there's the closet doors I was talking about. One thing people don't think about having really handy in a hurry is a first aid kit and a fire extinguisher. You just never know. So those are always good to have in your layout room or in close proximity. This is a view of the layout when I put in the first level, the lower level. And you can see the framing's not in yet on the foundation yet, but all the track and roadbed is in, and I think I had gotten the wiring done. So I was making some pretty good progress at that point. But you can see as you look into the photo, you can see there's a lower level and here's an upper level up here. And then here's a view of some of the rough scenery in place. The scenery is just foam. I cut up the foam and shaped it and then covered it with plaster cloth and then painted it with cheap paint. And it was a good foundation for the scenery that was to come on top of it. Here's another view. Those of you that have railfan Tehachapi in that area know that the creek goes through several parts, and there's one that's got a really neat bridge on it, and I was kind of trying to go after that, that view here. And here it is with some water running through it. Not real water, of course, but Woodland Scenics water. And I was pretty happy with the results as it came out. And then here's a little more bigger view back to way. The layout is built in such a way that I can run multiple trains without really worrying about them running into each other. We've got 3 trains running here. We've got one in the foreground here, one up here, and one up in the background. You can see some of the backdrops in the back there with the self-adhesive vinyl backdrops. They're basically photos. And I just cut the skies off of them and put them right up. Really easy to do, and I think they came out looking pretty good. Here's another view. If you look closely, you can see some raccoons getting in the trash cans back in the corner here. It's kind of fun to have those little things to point out to the kids when they come to visit. This is a view farther out on the peninsula. It shows you the benchwork construction, basically on risers. I was very careful to try to maintain less than a 2% grade throughout the layout. So I gave the elevation of climbing and descending, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure the trains could, the engines could pull the cars. I wanted to run 40, 50 car trains on the layout. So that was important to me. In the background, up in the corner there, you can see our fast clock, digital fast clock. We're still working on that. This is the finished area. These grade crossings light up and the gates come down and the bell rings. The bells came from, those are prototype bells I picked up. I got 3 different kinds of bell, so I can tell on the layout when the bell's going off where the train is. I'm not looking at it. There's another view of that same area. And coming down the other side of the peninsula, I've included service roads. I thought that was kind of a neat thing to add because we use them, we see them all the time along the tracks. So I thought that'd be a good thing to add. And here we are looking at it from the other direction. The rocks are just castings. Some of them are from Woodland Scenics. Just took them right out of the box and weathered them and stained them and then glued them in with hot glue and then scenic around them. The roads are styrene. I just cut the road to shape and then paint it gray. And then I scribe it with a flat bladed screwdriver for the striping. This is a Department of Forestry headquarters. You never know when you're going to have a fire. So we're ready to go. We've got a helicopter on the pad and some fire equipment there. Although this layout and I model is the Southern Pacific, I'm not a snob, so I let Santa Fe people run, if they want to come and run. And Rio Grande and just about anybody wants to run a train. And Ben even had his Missouri Pacific passenger train over here once. We ran that. So it's okay. This is the intermodal yard before it had any ground cover or scenery or paving done to it. There are 10 tracks here in pairs of 2. And I think that's going to look pretty good when it's all finished. Here it is with the paving. Again, the striping is just with a flat-bladed screwdriver. You can see the background, the background mountains, and that's just, I painted the sky, and I continue to struggle with clouds, so I'm still working on that. Good thing about clouds is if you don't like them, you can paint over them and do them again. There's a little closer view. The MyJack crane is with a metal kit, and built up 2 of those. This was before the striping. And here we are, we got some buildings set in there. I haven't glued anything in there yet because I have to climb up in there to put a grade crossing right up in this area on the upper level. So that'll all come out when I go climb in there to do that. And I'll be able to get out again, and then I'll finish this scene. I've also put lighting. I got LED rope lights underneath here now, so it lights it up a lot better and eliminates the shadows. This is a resin kit that was offered for a while. It came out okay, but resin kits are a challenge if you've never done one. It's really important to square the edges off really good and make sure you don't have any flash. But take your time. I worked on this for about a month and a half and got it coming out fairly decent. Those of you that are familiar, it's kind of similar to Fullerton. I don't think it's exactly Fullerton, but it's close. Another view of it. And this is coming out of that intermodal facility before there's any ground cover or ballast. I do paint the rails, just shoot them with flat black spray paint. It's a quick way to do it. And here's a little more finished scene there. The roads are black sandpaper, just cut to shape and then glued in. And then I find it works a little better with the scenery if I build a little bit of a hill or something along the back, so you don't have that sharp edge on the back of the layout. You can see in the foreground there, that's got that at Home Depot. I think it's for insulating pipes, but I use it to keep from bashing my head against the top of the shelf when I'm sitting at the workbench. This is a shot of the hump. You can see how I elevated it. I used the Woodland Scenic progressive blocks there, the risers. And then I built the yard ladder on a piece of styrene. And then it worked out pretty good. It's about an inch of elevation there and does the job. I've got a magnetic uncoupler there and works pretty good. I've got the trick is to make sure your cars are free rolling and that the couplers are micro trained so that they uncouple appropriately. The other thing, there's that door. I put a panel across the top of that door. I can still get out if I need to from underneath, but the scenery is now flush across there. And now you can see I put some foam in and around it. Got some of the road and the asphalt in there. And here it is, some ground cover on top of that. My friend and I scratch built this tower. If you've ever been up to West Colton or driven by it from the highway, it's pretty close approximation of what that tower is. I couldn't figure out what to do back in this corner. I was out in my backyard and I saw a hillside with a water tank on it. I thought, hey, I could do that. So that's how I came to have a water tank back in that corner. Another important thing, if you've not built a layout or thinking about it, is coving your corners. Squared corners don't look good, especially in photos. And that's just a really thin styrene. I just glued the edges in there and just painted over it. And not very hard at all to do. Also important, when you're ballasting, make sure you cover your points and all the movable parts of the turnout when you're doing that. Otherwise, you're going to have to spend some time cleaning out your turnouts. I was curious about how many cars would fit in this yard. And so I got all my 50-foot boxcars out and I did one full line of them. And then I filled in the other tracks as they came out and did a little math to figure out how many cars the yard would actually hold. Following the
How many?
prototype. Pardon?
How many?
About 275. Yeah, pretty good. Following the prototype at West Colton, when the road power cuts off from the engine, from the train, they travel down a track that skirts the yard, goes through a wash rack, and then they go into the diesel service facility. That's where my dad worked. That's where he retired out of, actually, there at West Colton. So we still have work to do over here, but you can got to get a flavor for what's coming. And that's the diesel service facility. A friend of mine actually did scale drawings from photographs, and then we scratch built that. Took a couple of years to finish it, but came out pretty good. And they're actually drawing a blank, the work trenches where the guys can go down underneath. I've been down inside those things under the engines. It's kind of freaky to be down under the engines, but those guys do it all the time. And then here's another view. This is coming out of the yard. This is the arrival departure yard over here. And then, of course, these are the departure tracks coming out of the service facility. And this track bypasses that so they can go down and couple onto the head end of the trains that are pulled out of the yard, and then they depart. And here's a view of the upper level above it. See how it all works. I built these little panels. A friend of mine built me some diode matrix boards. So you push one button and all the turnouts align for the proper track. And so I built the panels. Just made them out of styrene and painted them. And then on the actual main line, I use tortoise machines and use these little cups for the buttons. This is that vehicle service facility I was talking about, the transfer facility. So when this is done, this is all going to be paved in, and we'll have a lot of cars parked out in this area, vehicles, and then the ramps will be down at the end. Here you can see some of the styrene being used, and the mainline encircles it, just to get a little more mainline length. And I've got some striping. These will be the lanes that the cars are pulled into, and then they'll be loaded on trucks and then driven out of there to the respective dealerships. Here's a view of some of the bench work before it has scenery on it. It looks very skeletal to me now looking at it, but you can see got plenty of room for storage underneath, and all these boxes under here. I keep the freight cars in, keep the engines in there. So works out pretty nice. Here again, you can see I use 2x4s on the construction, and it holds up very well. As I finish areas of the layout and I paint these black, I don't even notice them. It doesn't really bother me when I'm looking at a scene or working in an area. and it really adds to the stability of those peninsulas. So yeah, it was a good thing. There's the air conditioner. It's a split AC unit. I've got the compressor outside, and then that's just the blower right up here. And sure comes in handy in the summertime, keep things nice and cool. Here you can see some of the scenery. There's a company that makes these resin retainer walls and portals, and they weather up pretty nice. And you can see how the foreground and the background are kind of merged together. And here you can see with more ground cover and access road, signals, and some of the other little things that kind of make things look good. The signals are Sunrise. By Sunrise, they're out of business. So I decided I better put in some protection so they don't get broken. They're pretty delicate. Here's another area showing the upper and lower level. I super elevated the outside edges of the tracks on all the curves, and then I used easements coming in and out of the curves. And it makes a big difference for operation, and it looks kind of cool too when they lean into it. This is that same area. Now I've got the panel in there, and I used some coving across that gap. Here's another side. This was all open before. That was that area I was telling you it looked so skeletal. But once you put the backdrops in and the ground cover, it fills in pretty nicely. This area is only about 6 inches deep. Here's that same area. Now we've got the backdrops and some clouds in. We've got some ground, some roads and parking lots and stuff that are going to go in there. And you can see here's one of the control for that turnout. And we're departing that area now and heading into the tunnel there. This kind of shows you more of that foam that's covered with plaster cloth and then just painted. And up in that area, just east of Tehachapi, they have a lot of windmills. So I thought it'd be cool to have some working windmills up here. So those things are motorized, and then I put some aircraft warning lights on the top of them. Don't see that on layouts very often. Of course, they don't generate any energy. They have to turn on electricity to make them work. You know. This was my experiment with static grass. Some areas are better than others, but I'll go back and rework that up a little bit more. And again, the rock castings. And you got a couple of transients down here hanging out. I guess that's not politically correct. But nice to have some little details along the right of way, like some old ties or debris, that kind of stuff you see along the way. And here you can see that was a lower level that I showed you from before, and then this is the upper level. When you're running the trains, really, you don't even notice the level that your train isn't on. You're just focused on your train. That engine's kind of interesting. That's my revisionist history. In my revisionist history, SP bought UP. So you can see we massed that out. It's an SP engine now.
I like it.
Yeah, just another view looking back down as it goes around. The lower track is inside that in a tunnel, and then the upper is exposed. You can see these little gray areas here. This is a patch that I used. It's called, it's basically a paper mache product that when you add water to it, it turns into clay. And it worked really well for just kind of patching those areas that needed it. Just another view. I didn't have enough room to do the whole monolith cement plant, so this is, I guess we call it mini lith for now. But I enjoyed doing that, and I put some little lights up on the top on the machinery that you sometimes see at night, you know, at some of those industrial plants. It's kind of a neat effect. And this is on the other end of that end. This is across the garage door, actually, on the upper level. We've got a train coming out of the tunnel there. And then, of course, this area of the town. As I've been doing the scenery, I thought, you know what, I should just do all the mountains while I've got all the stuff here and get it all done. And then I'll go back and do the towns and do all the towns at the same time, because I'm using basically the same materials. So that's why the towns really aren't that finished, but the areas in between are. And this kind of shows how well that backdrop kind of blends in. I'm not taking any credit for this other than that I bought it. But you can really blend it in with the foreground hills and stuff, and at the right angles, you know, it just looks like it goes on and on. And here we've got my second attempt with the water effects here. Coast Starlight didn't actually go through Tehachapi on a regular schedule, but they did divert across here once in a while. So that's how I'm
I
getting.
actually rode the Coast Starlight over to Tehachapi on one of the diversions.
How cool is that?
It was pretty fun.
Oh my God. That must have been-
Especially because we had right of way. So we were going by trains at every siding.
Oh, that's awesome. That would have been something to do.
Is that something you planned for, or did it just happen?
Yeah. Yeah, we found out that they were working on the main line, and me and Joe D'Elia took the train up to, what was it, to Oakland,
Yeah.
over to Tehachapi. And then the next day we took it back.
Smart.
That's awesome.
Did it twice.
Oh, that's great. Be my luck, I go through it at night.
No, it was during the day both times.
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
This kind of gives you a kind of perspective of all the framework and everything. Now I'm building the upper level, and it's all going in. I'd never built a double deck layout before. And so I read Tony Kester's book on double deck layouts, and kind of had some ideas of my own, how I wanted to do it. And, if you ever decide to do a double deck layout, talk to me, because there's some things I can tell you about. I've got the scars to prove it. And here you can see that same peninsula now. It's got the ground cover on it. This is one of the more recent areas I've seen it during COVID. I was struggling with the decision. I wanted to do the loop ranch. The loop ranch is outside the loop. Well, I couldn't really put it in the aisle, and I didn't want to leave it out. So I put it inside the loop. So that's why my loop ranch is inside the loop. But we've got, you know, if you ever have an old box car, weather it up and use it for storage. And, this is the Woodland Scenics fence product that I'm using around here. And came out I had a lot of fun building this segment. There's your cattle. You can't see it, but there's also a lot of flies in there. And this is the other part of it. It's the ranch house and the windmill, storage barn, hay, equipment. And then it's fun to add little details, like this guy's getting ready to work on the signals here in the equipment shed. And things like that add a lot. And this is the coming into Bakersfield at this point. This is be the east end of the yard. Everything going toward San Francisco is westbound on the SP. And everything going away from San Francisco is eastbound. It's a little confusing. And here it is. I've since ballasted this, but you can just see the difference with the backdrop in there, what a difference it makes. And then here's the main area. This is going to be a residential area in here, an old residential area. Industries along the back wall, and a service area in here for the diesels. And the turntable is from Walthers, works really nice. Here's another view. A friend of mine is building me a fascia for the Bakersfield station. And that's going to go right in here. And that's it. Anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, Don, I'm curious about up to date. What's been the most arduous aspect of building it?
You know, the trick for me is to go out there when I'm in the mood.
Mhm.
If I go out there when I'm in the mood, it's not arduous. It's nothing I haven't had fun with.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I think when people visit, I think the thing that they're most interested in is the design, because it takes about 20 minutes real time to get across the layout. And that's without having to wait for meets or anything like that. So it's a nice, it fits in the room well, and it's got a nice long main line to it. And that's what I really like about it. So.
Don, I wanted to comment real quick about some of your elevation. You've got a section of lower track and higher track, and you actually put some sky in there before you got to the upper track, and I thought that was a really interesting solution for a grade problem between two tracks that are relatively close together. I hadn't seen that before, and I just wanted to make sure I highlighted it.
Thanks. I'm glad. You know, a lot of this stuff you just make up as you go, and that'll work. You know, you just put it in there, or you read things and, you know, study what other people do.
Well, that was the first time I saw it, and that was certainly, it worked. I thought that was very successful.
The other nice thing is there's plenty of room to move around. The aisles are large enough. So we've had 6 people out there at a time and pretty much not stepped all over each other and been able to run our trains. And, so that's been really fun to do that. Plus I've got all the storage area underneath for everything. So that's good too. Yeah, I can't really take credit for the backdrops other than finding the guy that was selling those. And he was very nice to deal with. And then I just did the sky and the clouds. So.
Yeah, I got my backdrops from Backdrop Junction as well. And he was very nice to work with. Unfortunately, he had some family issues that have come up, and I know that he briefly was back in operation, but my understanding is Backdrop Junction is not active right now.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. But he was really nice to me. I mean, when I was talking to him on the phone about what I needed, he said, "Oh, you don't need sky? I can save you a lot of money." And basically, because he doesn't have to print that material, I got my backdrops for about half price. So that was good.
Wow.
It was good because I cut all the sky off. So, anybody else?
There's a couple questions. Someone asked that or mentioned that you said something about prototype bells. What were you talking about with prototype bells?
Like grade
Grade
crossings.
crossings. Yeah, on the grade crossings.
So how did you?
Before they went to electronic bells, they had mechanical bells, and those actually run on 12 volts. And so I've got them hooked into my my signal detection. So when the gates start to drop and the lights come on, the bell starts to ring.
Well, wait a minute. So you're saying you went out and found some physical bells from those signals?
I didn't find them; they were given to me.
Wow.
North County Transit was getting rid of. They were upgrading to electronic bells, and they said, "Do you want some?"
What do they look like, Don? Do they look like bells on a steam engine or just something else?
No, they look like kind of like a fire bell if you've ever seen
Oh, yeah.
on the wall. And they've got an electromagnet inside to cause the clapper to go back and forth to hit the bell.
That's so great.
But
Isn't it a little loud though for the room?
well, that's what I was going to tell you. These things are wrapped in foam rubber, and then put it in a
Mm.
Xerox box. So
Bit of
that's how I got it.
experimentation on that, you mean?
The other thing is I've got cutoff switches for the bells, because the guys that have been to my house will tell you, after the first time, oh, that's cool. After the
Yeah.
sixth time, turn that damn thing off. So, I have cutoff switches for all of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'll
then
go ahead and ask my other question. Sorry, on the chat, I had asked about the guys you met, or the people you met, I should say, modelers you met on the Coast Starlight trip who helped you look at the layout while you were designing it. Have you kept in touch with any of those folk?
Unfortunately, I didn't. It was kind of a one-time meeting on the train, and we just sat there for a couple hours and had something.
I would have, yeah, if I were one of those people, I would have said, I'll bet they'd also be interested in the progress
You're
made.
probably right. Yeah, it was just a real pleasant afternoon. I was sitting there with my graph paper and my compass and everything.
Oh yeah.
Drawing and.
I'll tell you, when I go on those trips now, I always make a point to write down people's names and contacts.
That's
Never
smart.
can tell who they are, what they're doing. It's always fascinating. People do so many different things, and sometimes it's helpful, to have their contact information for whatever reason. A couple of years down the line, hey, I actually like to go to that ranch that guy ran back in Montana, Dude Ranch. Hey, I got his phone number.
Well, the other funny part of that story is 2 of the crew members were sitting there with us too. They're going, oh, you don't want to put that there. Put that over. Okay.
That is great.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, I have a question.
Yes.
Hey, I think you're setting up for operations, and I was wondering what's a typical length of a train you run?
They vary. We've got some short locals that we run. They can be anywhere from 10 to 15, 18 cars. But some of my unit trains can be 40, 50 cars with 3 or 4 engines on the head end. I'm not brave enough to do distributed power yet, but someday maybe. Someday.
And then there's another question about you have Atlas turnouts on the layout, Don?
I do.
And do you see any, have you had any problems with those over the long term?
The only problem I've had with the Atlas turnouts is if I get sloppy with my ballasting, and in my effort to clean it up, sometimes, I'll break something on it and I'll just replace it at that point. As far as continuity and electrical, all that, I haven't had any trouble. And I'm using 5s, 7s, and 10s. Any other questions? Or
What do you do to keep the track clean on the layout?
the best thing to do to keep your track clean is to run a train every day. If you run a train every day and you've got some masonite sliders on some of your box cars, you never have to clean it. Truth be told, I haven't run in a couple months because I've been working on scenery, so I'll have to get in there and give it a good cleaning with a bright boy and just hit the whole thing and then run a couple trains through it. It'll be fine. But
Don, that raises a question in my head about how often do you clean the wheels of your locomotive?
if it's been a while, I'll clean them. I'll just put them. I use alcohol
Okay.
and a cloth, paper towel. Just
Right.
takes about 30 seconds to clean the wheels and put them
Yeah.
on.
Are you running metal wheels on your cars or plastic?
Yes, that was a bit of an expense to do, but I have no regrets in doing it. I used, oh my goodness. I can't think of the brand.
Fox Valley.
Fox Valley.
Fox Valley. They're my favorite, but I've used some other ones too. And the other thing I want to tell you, thank you, Tim, for your comment on the scenery. But when I do scenery, I do it in layers. So what you're seeing right now, it'll get better because as I finish areas, I'll go back and do more. And by the time you guys can come over and see me, it'll look a lot better than it does in the photos now. That's just kind of a basic effort at this point. So I love doing scenery.
You know, those grass hills with the almost yellow grass hills.
Mm-hmm.
You were commenting, I think, on the texture. I don't know, you never know in person if it looks different, but the texture looked fine. Is there a reason you have them such a bright yellow? Have you thought of, spraying them a little bit of a tint, various colored tints?
I have, and I probably will. That I've been thinking about that. It's a little too uniform, and so I'd like to change it up a little bit. Weather it, I guess.
Are you using photos to help with that?
Yeah,
things
I've
like
about
that?
worn up. I've about worn out my Tehachapi book, the one that's predominantly it's by Schlesinger. I think it's mostly photos.
I'm not familiar with Tehachapi, but frankly, the further you're going north, when that stuff turns gold, it's so uniform. It's unbelievable. But that's up, middle of the state, more along the coast. So it's probably different there in Tehachapi and such.
Yeah, I'll study that a little more and probably give it some more effort. And, break it up a little bit.
Don, I found that once I do my scenery and I think, oh, this is great, it's done, I take a picture of it and then I blow it up and I look at it and I go, oh, that's not done.
I work on the premise that it's never done.
That might be a good way to look at it too.
But I'm right now I'm putting access roads in the Bakersfield area. I've ballasted all of that. And I'm putting in the asphalt access roads and getting ready to put some buildings in. And I've got some great lights I found on eBay. Very inexpensive LED lights. And those are going to go on both sides of the yard to light it up at night. That's another thing that's hard to translate with a photo presentation is running out there at night with the lights is a lot of fun. It really is. Because you've got the lights on the engine and you've got usually a marker on a caboose or a Fred on the back end. And then you usually pass through areas with lighting. The ranch has some lights in it. And, the cement plant, just, as it goes through the towns, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Don. Great conversation. Thank you, everybody. All right, so I think what we'll do is let's go to our show and tell. So Steve Seidensticker, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, very good. You're up.
I don't have a video. I just tried to share my screen. Never mind. Let's try this.
There you go.
Can you see it?
Nice.
All right.
That HO?
That's HO. And although I am a large scaler, and what I'd like to talk to a little bit about today is battery power. That thing will run across the table just like it's sitting there. I don't even have any HO scale track around, but it's battery powered and it has a Soundtrack sound system in it and a Blu-ray control system in it. And that's just what I'd like to talk a little bit about. Here it is with the cover off. And can you see the cursor here? That is a Soundtrack's TSU 1100 decoder or sound decoder with the whatever the diesel prime mover is that belongs in this. And it is right now just in a recession here in the side of the split frame. And I'm going to just take, right here is the opposite side. I just flipped it over 180. You see a little on-off switch there. And this black thing here that you see sitting in the frame, the decoder is just attached to this on this side. This is an 850 milliamp hour battery. And that will run this locomotive for approximately 3 hours, actually pulling a train. I have actually run it on one of Dick Trotter's operating sessions, and it worked just fine. And here is looking at the top of it. Here is just a standard 28 millimeter Soundtrack's speaker that just actually fits into the hole that Cato left in the chassis of this locomotive. I had to trim this a little bit, just file off the edges to get it down in there. This is the just the board that comes with the locomotive. And here you can see how I attach the decoder to the power, etc., and to the lights. And I just soldered the wires right into this this board. It's part of the standard board. And here is the blue rail control system, and it is attached to the bottom of the locomotive. And here is the blue rail, the Bluetooth communication module. And one of the benefits, of course, of attaching it to the bottom of the locomotive, it frees up the antenna. This part is just a built-in antenna, and it gets excellent range. It'll get you 50 to 100 feet. When I was running it at Dick Trotter's operating session, we put my iPhone in one corner of the layout and put the locomotive at the farthest corner, and we still had complete control of it. And here is, I don't want to see that one yet. Let's take a look at this one first. This is the main, what we call operating screen on the Blue Rail smart device, which can be an iPhone or an iPad. It has to be an iPhone 6S or newer, but and eventually it will also run on Android phones. But basically here you have a slider to control speed, a little icon here to turn lights on and off, bell, short horn, long horn, loco stop, and then forward reverse button. Loco stop just sets speed to 0, and here is a stop all that actually sends out the emergency stop DCC command to stop it immediately. And if you're consisting locomotives, which is something that's very nice and very easy to do, here is how you actually, I didn't put the different screens up, but you consisted here. Here is a little gear that is sort of the universal indicator of settings. And if you hit that, you'll go to this screen. And here we have how you can set CVs. And one of the nice things about Blue Rail is it really streamlines the setting of CVs. You have little sliders here, for example, the master volume. You can read and write any CV, even indexed ones, by just putting a page number of the index in here, CV number, the value if you want to write it, or if you read it, the value shows up in this window. You can read all CVs, and it will then propagate a complete list of all the CVs for that type of decoder. It's really a slick system, and this, you can't see it here because it's a static, but you can scroll through the entire list of CVs. It takes about, I think, about 2 or 3 minutes to, if you hit this button, to go ahead and read all the CVs. And you don't need a programming track. You don't have to worry about whether you're in service mode or track mode. It's invisible. You can don't have to worry about having other locomotives on. It's just a universal CV read write. I can't show it here, but if you're changing horns or bells, there's a little icon here that allows you to actually audition the sound that you're picking. Here's another another little panel that slides out from the left side if you're running a train. And here you have a standard, here are all the functions, but instead of just seeing F0, F1, actually we don't have an F0 because that's the light, the light icon. But F1 through all of here, all the way down here is functions 1 to 14. They're all lined up for what what soundtracks uses for these, but you can pick other decoders such as TCS or ESU, and this will pop up with the correct labels for those functions on those particular decoders. And if you want to, I haven't showed it here, but you can pull this out one more notch and you can just edit this. So if you have remapped some of the functions, you can now put in the text as to what those functions are. And to execute the functions, you just click on these, and you can also set them to be whether or not they're on, off, or toggled. So anyway, that's all I have. This is my effort to do a little show and tell you, and tell you how I do battery power. Let me back up and say one more thing about, let's take a look at this picture. The thing that makes battery power relatively easy on this locomotive is that the motors are in the trucks. And I am hoping that more and more HO diesel locomotive manufacturers will go ahead and adapt this type of construction, because it leaves a lot of room inside the locomotive body for batteries and control boards. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, Steve.
Yes.
This is Tim Foote. I have a what do you call it? A Bluetooth app that I've used at your on your garden, on your large scale stuff on my Android. That wouldn't work for this HO?
Not this particular one. This product is the second generation of Blue Rail, and it's called Blue Rail DCC. The Android version of Blue Rail will work with the original Blue Rail boards, which were dedicated. In other words, they could control speed, direction, and lights, but no sound. Actually, they had sound, but it came out of the smart device itself. So it's a little different. The Blue Rail, the organization that runs it is going to port the current iOS only app to Android, but it's a couple of months in the future. The people that are doing this want to get all of the bugs out and all the planned functionality in before they spend a chunk of money to actually port it to Android.
And what is that Blue Rail, that Blue Rail card you have underneath the engine there? What would that cost?
I think this retails for about, what, $90 or $100?
$95.
Yeah, okay.
$95.
I was going to ask you, Pete. Yeah, okay.
What's the battery cost?
$40.
And I think the decoder costs, what, about 110, 120?
Yeah, right around in there. One list on that decoder is 120. Well, you have an old one. The current one, the 2200 is, I believe, 125, and the 1100 is 129 list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you do some searching, you can get a better price.
Do you have to use a special decoder for the Blue Rail, or can you use just any decoder?
Any DCC decoder.
Yeah.
Any what we're saying is any NMRA compliant decoder.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant by GCC. Any other questions? I will stop sharing. Hey,
Thank you, Steve.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right. So our second show and tell today is Steve Bradley, and he's sharing a kit bash he did on a caboose. So we had Steve Bradley not too long ago, maybe last time, I think, right?
Yeah, I was here last month.
So here he is, back. He can't get enough of us. Okay, let's see here.
Oh, we get them hooked.
That's right. That's right. We appreciate it. All right, here we go. You're up, Steve.
Hear me?
Ed,
Yep, we got you. There we go.
Lost. Hold on. Hold on.
It's like you're in a blizzard.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
a
here's
kit
my
ba-
layout.
it's a kit bash in the snow.
Yes.
Out in the snow. Okay, I too model the Southern Pacific, but it's mostly a few years before when Don Fowler does. And one of the things that I came upon in doing my research on Southern Pacific railroads about 100 years ago is that the Southern Pacific was very, very conscientious about using their train cars for as long as possible. And as wood boxcars got to the end of their working life, they found that they could become a caboose relatively easily.
So you're still all white. Should we be looking at something, you think?
Oh, you can't see this?
No.
No.
Okay, hold on.
Once you got done with your introduction there, I was feeling like I wanted to see something.
We can see
Oh,
you.
yeah, you should have saw something.
Yeah, we see
Yeah.
you.
Okay, let's try. I'm going to
That's
back
strange,
out again.
Okay.
Okay, screen, whiteboard, picture, share. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
You did it.
Sorry about that. So to reiterate, the Southern Pacific 100 years ago was very prolific in taking older boxcars and repurposing them as a caboose. They did this on many of their lines over the 13,000 miles of rail that they had in the United States. And I came upon a couple of pictures of just what these guys look like. And I found that it's a relatively simple build to kit bash a boxcar, or even find kits that are made specifically for a Southern Pacific boxcar caboose. In this case, the modification is maybe a man door on the side, cutouts for some windows, a little bit different step for people to get in off the ground, and side ladders versus just the end ladders like you would see, and of course marker lights if you're back far enough. Oh, stop it. So with that, I found a Westerfield kit that would get these guys out of the way here. A Westerfield kit that it's a resin kit and is Don commented about resin kits. You have to get things square. At this point, I wasn't quite square on it, and you can see some of the bottom of the space of the
Can you
car.
make that bigger? We're just seeing a little tiny thumbnail.
Can you guys see it?
We're
Pretty
seeing your
small.
line of thumbnails.
It's a small picture.
How about that?
Nope. Steve, click on each photo and see if it brings it up,
You're just sharing the wrong screen.
or make that whole.
Just
Oh,
double
that
click.
could be sharing the wrong screen. That could be it.
I click on this. It
You
comes
could be
up
sharing
with-
your folder instead of the open picture, perhaps.
Right, that's exactly right. Change the screen you're sharing.
I think
That's
you
what we
could
call
double
the
click. It would
joys of
come up, though.
technology.
That's right. All right, now you're sharing your whole computer, so that might take care of it.
There we go.
Woohoo!
Ta-da, you got it.
Ta-da.
Eureka.
So that's the Westerfield kit as I started it. And as Dawn mentioned earlier, if you don't square things up, you get little weirdities like this down here on the bottom edge that I had to kind of work with this kit to just trim out. This is just when it was after it was put together and painted, but you can tell it's a resin kit because you can see a little bit of the bow in the roofing. That's just kind of the way it lays out. This is what it looks like after it's weathered and detailed and decaled and all that other fun stuff. But this is a good example of that picture of the circa 1923 car that you saw in the beginning. Westerfield makes these kits for Southern Pacific, and you can build them straight out. But as you may or may not know by now, I'm also into narrow gauge. And the Southern Pacific also, it's documented, had narrow gauge boxcar cabooses. So I kit bashed a LaBelle kit and created this guy, which is basically the same thing without the man door. I just used what would be the sliding door itself for access. And then that's kind of like the A end. And that's the B end. So you kind of can see that you end up with a relatively simple kit bash can get you a nice little unique car that was actually very prolific on the Southern Pacific system. They're fun build and they're relatively easy to do. You just need some outfit windows, a little bit more time to put in some steps and grabs. I think I pulled this step here off of an old roundhouse kit, and I retooled it a little bit, and of course some marker lights and a roof jack, and you're pretty much you're in business. It goes really fast. And in literally a night or two, you can have a really unique car that can work really, really well. If you have a plastic box car, you could pre-drill for the windows and cut it out and set in a Tichy window or something like that, and it could change into a nice car very, very quickly. So that's all I wanted to share. It's something unique, something you don't see all the time, and I thought it might be kind of fun to share something that you can do just in a short period of time, and give yourself a nice consist. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah,
Yeah, Steve.
How did they see out of this? I noticed it doesn't have a bay window or cupola. Was it just for short trains or just for locals that they didn't need the
No,
visibility?
they were for long trains, and basically you saw a conductor sticking his head out a window is what it really came down to. They did in many cases have doors on the A end of the what would become the A end of the boxcar. But they, if they really wanted to see out of them, they would open the window and they'd look out the window. Good old SP. Any questions?
Yeah, Steve, how much of a remodel in the interior of it?
Well, I know that I haven't seen any pictures of the interior of a car, of a boxcar caboose, but every one that I have seen has a smoke jack of some type on it. So
Right.
you know that they had a stove in there, a pot belly or something similar to keep them warm. But other than that, compartmentalize, I don't know that they even had partitions in them. I'm sure that there was maybe a bunk, and there may have been a little alcove for a Johnny Quick, but that was it.
Thanks.
Okay, Ryan, back to you.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Thank you,
Came out
sir.
Great, very nice.
Yep.
All right. All right. How about we bring Don Fowler back? Does that sound like a good idea? Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
There we go.
You're on mute, Don.
Okay, you're up. And Don's going to share now about his layout with his development of operations.
This will be fun. Let me get a presentation here for you. There it is. Everybody see okay?
Yes.
You can see clearly now.
Oh, the rain must fall. Okay, let me start off by saying I don't pretend to be an expert on operations for any railroad, and every railroad had slightly different ways of doing things. I'm not an expert on the SP. I know enough to be dangerous. And so with that said, I wanted to do this for people who are thinking about incorporating operations on their model railroad, whether they're in the design phase or whether they've already built it and maybe want to get a little more out of it. I will tell you this, I was very resistant to operations, and I didn't build my layout or design it with operations in mind. I've operated on several layouts and it's okay, but it just wasn't really my cup of tea. There were either too much paperwork to fill out or too many cards to carry around, or I've never seen a tab on a prototype boxcar, and I'm not knocking it if people like to do that, but it just wasn't for me. And so I didn't design the layout for operations. And again, this is the layout, and I just wanted to run long trains over the layout from yard to yard. And I had some industry spurs put in there just for looks, really. The layout is 20 by 22 double decked, and it runs on Digitrax DCC, and it's wireless. So we can accommodate 50 car trains on there pretty nicely. They don't crash into each other. The layout includes 388 feet of main line plus 3 passing sidings. That's not part of the main line, but it's adjacent to. And then 2 reverse loops, 2 major yards. One's a classification hump yard at West Colton, and the other at Bakersfield is used as visible staging. There's an intermodal yard, an auto transfer facility, a petroleum facility, 10 rail served industries, and 4 passenger stations. Ryan was kind enough to create this schematic for me, and you can kind of see how the layout's laid out. Runs from Long Beach on this end all the way down through here, and then you go back here, and it runs all the way over to Bakersfield. And we used the prototype mileposts so nobody would be confused. But that's what's on the layout now. Well, back to the schematic, the track plan. Ryan and Steve Seidensticker approached me about hosting operating sessions on my model railroad. And after I fell over laughing and said, no way, they persisted. And I said, okay, fine. I got a layout to build. If you guys want to put together some operations, I'm all for it. Let's do it. And so they did. We also invited Dick Roberts and Bob Treat to participate in the design process, which they did and were very helpful. We had some very spirited discussions and devised a simple but interesting plan to ease the railroad and me into operations. And I don't like paperwork. I don't like filling out forms. I don't like carrying cards around. I just want to run the trains and enjoy them. So we acknowledged that we did need a few forms that would be beneficial for operators. So what we did was we came up with a timetable, a passenger train schedule, definitions and operating rules, train orders, a route schematic, and train sequencing schedule. And I'll explain what those are and how they work. I made notes so I wouldn't get confused. Operators have the choice when they come to run the layout. They can run with the timetable in their pocket or in their hand, or they can just use a train order. Train order basically just, let's see if I can find it real quick. There it is. Train order looks like this. Sorry for the photo, but it's got a magnet on the back, so you can just clip it onto anywhere on the layout where there's a bolt, and it tells you exactly what to do, step by step. And then on the back side is, in case you get lost, there's your schematic for the layout, so you know where you're at. You can see the little magnet up on the top. So that's the only form there is. And then inside the actual timetable, we've got our all of our mileposts and all the locations on the layout. And then we also have the Coast Starlight schedule, because everybody has to stay out of the way of the Coast Starlight. It's a priority train. So that's it. There's no paperwork, nothing you have to fill out, nothing to carry around really. You're free to run the trains and, just focus on that. And here's a better view of what the train orders look like. This is for the Crest tower operator and switching crew. The tower operator aligns the yard ladder for car destination. He supervises or directs the Crest switching crew to advance the cars up the hump and when to stop. Uncouples the cars and allow them to roll up into their destination track, and then they just repeat until finished. Absent any specific direction, these are the tracks are numbered 1 through 8, and it tells you what kind of cars can go in each track. We try to keep the same number of cars in each bull track, keep it balanced. And then here are the instructions for the switching crew. The crew is to board the motive power, and when they get authority, they align the spur switch to the main line. They align Crest for the hump, and then start shoving the car string to the tower at about 5 miles an hour. They take the movement orders from the Crest tower operator to push the cars over the hump, and when they finish, they reset turnouts and return to the motive power Crest power spur. That's it. Pretty basic and easy to understand. Our assignments on the layout include a dispatcher, yard masters, hostlers, through train crews, and local switching crews. And then we run 3 types of trains: scheduled passenger trains, through freight train extras, and local freight trains. I decided to include some basic definitions and operating rules that I gleaned from the Southern Pacific's Rule and Regulations Manual. And yes, I did read the entire manual and cherry picked the things that I thought were appropriate to include. I don't make anybody read this. I just thought it was kind of a fun thing to include in the timetable. It's kind of interesting though, and it can give you some insight to how they actually operated their trains. For example, first we have definitions. ABS. ABS is a series of consecutive block signals actuated by trains. What is a block? It tells you, if you ever were confused about any of the terminology, it tells you what it is. And there's a couple of pages of them, but I didn't use the whole manual, obviously, just a few. Again, this is the beautiful schematic that Ryan created for us, so we could see the route at a glance, know where we were at on the layout at any given time. This is a dispatch sequencing schedule. This is really for the dispatcher, and I've been kind of playing that role. And I basically tell the operators when to start their trains and get going. We've experimented with the fast clock, and we're still refining that process, trying to find just the right formula for that speed. 1 to 4, I think, is where we want to be. But these are the symbols for the trains and where they're originating from, where their destination is, what kind of train it is, whether it's loaded or empty, and then the departure times. And if you see, these trains are leaving from the west, these trains are leaving from the east, from Bakersfield, and they stagger about 2 hours, 1, 3, 5, and then they kind of stagger themselves out. So passenger trains, we run past mostly the Coast Starlight. When it gets to Bakersfield, it reverses direction and becomes the train that's going, I think it's the number 11 that's going in the other direction. But it's basically the same train. I do have 2 versions of this train. We could have an east and westbound meet. I've also got some Metrolink equipment, so it'd be a bit of a stretch, but we could run some Metrolink trains in there. Passenger trains are the only trains that actually run on a time-specific schedule. The other trains all have start times, but this train is required to be at a station and depart a station at specific times according to the timetable. All other trains are required to give it priority, and the dispatcher makes certain of that. This is the fast clock. Rail Logic, I think, made them, and I've got two screens, one on either side of the room, so they're easy to see. Through train extras, they could be unit trains, manifest freights, business trains, special movements, work trains, just about anything you can think of. I've got about, I'm ashamed to tell you, I've got about 1,600 cars, so we can have different trains every session. I mean, we can really mix it up. But I've tried to get specific to the types of trains that would operate in this part of the country on the SP in that time period. So here we've got a container unit train coming through. Here's a mixed freight. Now that's a unit coal train. Here's the SP business train. And there's the Ringling Brothers circus train, which is kind of a fun train to operate. So you've got several types of trains that can be operated at any given time. Through freight trains are a great way for a new person to come operate the train. They're just basically running the train from one end of the layout to the other and possibly back again. And it really gets them familiar with the right of way and where the meets are and that kind of thing. As part of my research, I discovered that SP used origin and destination codes and in freight train symbols. So the trains are, let's just say they're coming from Bakersfield and they're going to City of Industry. So it would be BKCI. And then whatever type of train that was, it would probably be Autorack, so it would be an A. And this is how we symbol the train, so you know what train we're talking about. Now here's a local. This is the Bakersfield local. And the way we run locals are we just swap like cars. So Industry has 3 boxcars. There's 3 boxcars on the outgoing train, and they just swap the cars out. We don't have to worry about car numbers or anything else. If it's hoppers, it's 3 hoppers for 3 hoppers. It's just a swap. And you can see on the instructions here for the Bakersfield, Palmdale local, Bakersfield, Palmdale local, right there. On dispatch authority, they leave the yard, get on the main, and start heading toward Tehachapi. There, they take the left diverging track into the siding and service industries that I haven't yet named, so we just call them Edward, Frank, and George, EFG. And then we pull all the boxcars onto the spur, and we spot 3 at each industry, and then proceed on to Palmdale. At Palmdale, they pull the loaded hoppers from the gravel plant, put in the empty ones, reverse train direction, and head back up to Tehachapi. When they get to Tehachapi, they serve the Monolith cement plant. They pull the full hoppers out, put incoming empty hoppers in, and then they head back to the Bakersfield yard and stop a train on whatever track is designated by the dispatch. So here we have the train leaving Bakersfield yard. Here they are at Tehachapi. They're switching out those industries along that spur. Here we are switching out the gravel plant. And back up at Tehachapi, switching the cement plant. And then they head back down up to the Bakersfield yard. And that's the Bakersfield local. The other thing I thought we could look at is the Crest Tower operation, because that's kind of an interesting thing. And I think I ran through this before, but basically it tells the tower operator how to break the cars down, tells them the switching crew what to do. And here we have the road power cutting off from its train at the tower. It's going to take the bypass track around to the wash rack and the service facility. Then the hump crew is going to pull off this siding, get on here behind the train and start shoving at the direction of the tower operator. At the tower, at the hump, the cars are broken down into new trains at that point. And then the trim tower, the trim crew pulls the cars all together on each track, and upon direction, they'll take them down to the departure yard. The power, having been fueled and serviced, will then leave the service area and then hook onto their train and head back out on the main for the next trip. One of the things that we found were helpful as we got into the operation was to make sure everything was clearly labeled. So all the locations along the route that are identified on the timetable are identified on the side of the fascia with the milepost. I also found it helpful for the guys to know when to start blowing our horn for the grade crossing. So I've got whistle posts installed. And here's one of those panels I built. One of the things I hadn't done was numbered the tracks, so they didn't know which track was which until I put the numbers on there. So that was important.
Oh yeah.
But that's how we're doing operations. This thing can evolve into something more. We may leave it like it is for a while. We're having a lot of fun though, and it takes a couple hours to run your train and get the trains back. If you finish with one train, you can pick up another assignment and do another one if you like, or take a break or whatever you want to do. But we've been having a lot of fun. We've had as many as 6 people operating. We haven't killed each other or gotten each other's way, and we're having fun. It's also helping me to focus on things that need attention, like if there's a switch that's not working properly or whatever, piece of equipment that needs to be replaced or repaired. And then it's really gratifying to watch people run your railroad in a prototype fashion and see all these trains moving around on the layout and how they communicate with each other. And sometimes I just kind of like to stand back and just watch it all happen. It's really cool. If you haven't considered operations, I would suggest you get over to somebody's layout once this mess is over with COVID and try it out, see if you like it. It beats the hell out of just running the train in circles, and it really brings the layout to life. I'm really grateful to the guys for kind of pushing me into doing this. because my layout's got all new dimensions of things to do now. And I'll never be tired of this railroad as a result. So my hat's off to those fellas for helping out. And that's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Don, I'm curious to know if JMRI had any hand in putting this together.
We tried initially using JMRI. Steve was actually working on that, but the problem we found was they were sending the wrong kind of cars to the wrong kind of industry.
Huh.
And it got kind of complicated. And so we decided, you know what, we're just going to swap car for car. So we don't have to look at car numbers. It doesn't matter. It's just boxcar for boxcar, hopper for hopper, and mechanical reefers. What's cool about it, let me spin back here just a little bit. I want to show you something. There, you can see it. Here's the lower level. So you've got a job right here for somebody to put trains together, or to take a train out on the to run an intermodal. This is also this red line is also a reverse loop to right here. You've got a grain elevator, 3 industries here. They are all served by mechanical reefers, and the one over here. So the City of Industry local comes out of here, and it services all 5 of these industries on the lower area. When you go up on the upper section, the Bakersfield local serves 5 industries as well. It just worked out that way. There's 3 industries on this spur. There's a cement plant. Back on the previous, there's the gravel plant down here. They come all the way down to the gravel plant and then go back. And then they're dodging through freights in the meantime. So that's kind of how the things have been working for us. And the guys have kind of been taking turns trying different jobs. The hump job is really popular. The guys like doing that. It takes at least 2 people to do that, because you got to have that's where the cars shove the train comes in here. So the last car is there, and then the motive power, the road power heads down to the service area, and then they start shoving those cars up over the crest into one of these classification tracks.
What do you, Don? This is Steve Bradley. What do you use for uncoupling?
I've got a magnet up there. With the micro train cars and couplers that work pretty good. I've still got some work to do on some of the cars, but it's been working pretty good. In lacking that function, we've got toothpicks and bamboo skewers that we can use as well if there's a hubbub. One problem we encountered was the hump was a little too effective, and some of the cars are a little too free rolling, so they go flying. So the way we got around that, Dick Roberts came up with the idea of putting fishing line, that real fine monofilament line, just sticking up just a little bit to just kind of hit the axle and slow the cars down. And that's worked pretty good. So.
Don, this is Paul Wilfong, and the other guys who helped you design the operations. I'm curious, a recent issue of the NMR magazine had an article about operations, and it sounded very similar, where the fellow designed it to be scalable, but also on clubs where I think, the people couldn't read numbers, and also between operating sessions, you had work sessions. So you didn't know what cars would be where. So they just did a swap, kind of like you do. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering if any of you guys have seen that article and how it would compare to what you're doing. It sounds so similar to me.
It does sound similar. And it's just something we decided because N-scale car numbers are sometimes hard to read. And
oh, yes.
I don't care for tabs on cars. I don't think that looks right. And so we just decided, boxcar for boxcar. Like I said, it's just an easy way to do it.
Yeah. So no one's seen that article?
I glanced at it. I just got my copy a couple days ago.
Okay. It's a long article, so I skimmed it. I didn't read the whole thing, but I plan to. And like I say, it just strikes me as very similar. So it's kind of interesting.
Probably is. We thought it was an original thought, but I'm sure other people thought of it as well.
Yeah, I have that problem of not reading, but also, like I say, you're not guaranteed. Don, do you try to keep things the same during between sessions, or you just move cars around willy-nilly and not worry about it?
For the most part, they stay. We were getting together before COVID hit. We had been able to have 6 sessions. We started with 2 people, then expanded to 4, and then up to 6. And it was really evolving nicely. Then COVID hit, so we thought we'd better not.
Yeah, my point is this approach solves that problem anyway. So very nice.
It does. It does. So
Except of course you might say swap cars. You got 3 on your train and 2 in the yard. Well, I think this guy just said, just take the 2 out and put in the 3. And
yeah,
don't
that's all you
worry
got to
about
do. It's a pretty even exchange. Anybody else have a question? And I was going to invite Ryan or Steve, or I don't know if Dick or Bob's here, but you guys want to chip in or add anything that I missed, please feel free.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, you were saying you have different types of trains. So you have unit trains, manifest trains. I know what those 2 are.
Mhm.
And so you model business trains for the Southern Pacific. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just for the excuse to have one of the older type of trains. And then I can use some vintage equipment. Like I got these beautiful F units with sound from Broadway Limited. And they're just awesome. You can't see the engines very well, but it's an ABA set. So it's an excuse to run a vintage train like that. You call it a business special or whatever you want to call it. Just kind of fun to do that. I could have just as easily put an Amtrak engine on the front of it or some modern equipment, which they sometimes did. They'd put new cars on the front.
I think that's part of the simplicity of the design. There's only one scheduled train. There's one schedule, and you just can substitute anything in for that Amtrak train. You can
That's right.
have a special train run on its schedule. It's his railroad. You do it however you want.
And that's
very flexible.
That's the other thing. If you're going to design operations, and it's great to have people participate, but in the final chapter, it's your layout. You do it however you want. And if there's somebody doesn't like it, then they can go out the door.
I was just going to say, I really like that business train idea because I know someone who models business trains. So that's pretty cool. And then you said you have what's a special, I'm not sure what a special movement train is. Is that?
Special movement could be like that Ringling Brothers train I showed you.
Oh, okay.
Or it could be a work train. Maybe you've got a ballast train out there, or I don't really run wreck trains, train wrecks, but if you've got a ballast train out there or somebody laying new rail or something like that, those are kind of fun. And then the trains have to they all have to work around each other. This circus train is about 40 cars long. So it's a big train. Sometimes it's better to move it in 2 movements. So you might have 2 sections, one trailing.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
very nice.
It's fun.
Hey, this is Steve. I wanted to just make a comment about exchanging cars. Just exchanging one car for the other, or three and three. That's an old. I mean, if you read some articles about operations from 50 to 70 years ago, that's the way they did it. And I still remember reading one where the directions were to the engineer and conductor of the train, and they said, "Hey, if you're going by an industry and looks like an interesting car that you'd like to pick up, go pick it up. And look, there's room of a car you want to get rid of, just put it in there."
You told us you invented that, Steve.
Hey, I'm not that old.
I wasn't going to make the comment.
I'll be happy to.
Hey,
one of the nice things that I did in designing the track plan was I made passing sidings very long. So you can get easily a 40, 50 car train in a passing siding. You see this one right here that I'm showing on the screen right now. It goes all the way to here. And then there's another one that's up here. It runs all the way over. I'm on the wrong part, but it goes from here and then continues on all the way to here. There's another passing siding here that goes all the way around to here. So, I mean, there's plenty of room to have meets, and I wanted to have meets on a single track main line. So that was kind of one of the design things I wanted to have.
Don, this track plan that you've been showing us here, what program did you use to develop that? Or
my good friend Steve Seidensticker did that for me. So Steve, do you remember what you used?
Yeah, it was a program I run on my Mac called Canvas. It's well, it's reasonably priced, and it's basic drawing program. You can do a lot with it, but simple drawings like this are easy to do on it, or any drawing program. And it exports to the sort of the industry standard that AutoCAD uses. I forget what it is, but so you could import and export these files.
What was the name again, Steve?
Canvas.
Canvas. It's not specifically a track planning program. It's just a drafting.
No, it's just a drawing program.
Yeah.
And then, Don, how long did you say your operating sessions usually are? I kind of forgot.
2 to 3 hours. And you know, we could go on. I mean, basically we just kind of go till we're tired and say, okay, this is a good place to take a break or stop. But currently they've been running 2 to 3 hours. The other thing I wanted to mention was about visible staging. I'm a big advocate for that. Some people like hidden staging, but hey, you got great trains. Why not leave them out there for people to see? And then you don't have to be peeking in the dark trying to find the train and line the turnouts properly. So that's why my Bakersfield yard is pretty much just a staging yard for completed trains.
The nice thing is your layout is one of those layouts that kind of can restage itself. You
Yeah.
don't have to do a bunch of work before you start your session. The trains are either staged in Bakersfield, or this trains can be built out of Colton Yard as part of operations. And it's all done, and the cars you're just doing like cars and industries, they're just there. And so you could start anytime you want, and it's not really no work to get it going again.
And then unit trains can be operated out of the intermodal yard, the vehicle transfer facility, or the petroleum facility. So you can tank train, auto racks, double stacks, whatever you want. So you have a lot of versatility with what kinds of trains. When you come to operate, you just kind of pick what you want and go do your thing.
Well, the way I look at this layout is when I first saw it, I thought to myself, this is just like a club layout, but it's better because it's not a club layout. It's a private layout. So yeah, really, it's just really impressive to see in person. It's unbelievable.
It's fun, and I had a lot of good input and support from a lot of people, and that's the beautiful thing about NMRA and model railroading is we all help each other, we support each other. Ryan and Steve and the guys, they were just really great and very patient with me. So I'm loving operations now.
Hey, this is Steve. I gotta go. So, hey, great meeting and
Thank you,
great
Steve.
presentations, Don. Really appreciate
Steve.
it. But I gotta leave.
Good to hear and
Take
see
care,
you,
Steve.
Steve.
All right, thanks. Take care.
You too.
Don,
Yes, sir.
this is Tim.
Yeah, Tim.
For anybody that's thinking of buying a fast clock, you might consider there is a free app on Android. I don't know about Apple. A free fast clock app. It's called Model Railroad Fast Clock, which is real hard to remember. And it works well. And all you need is you can use it on a smartphone. You just mount this. You know, if you have an old smartphone you're not using,
Yeah.
you can mount it on the wall. You can mount it on your wall or a tablet if you want it to come out a little bigger. And it's pretty simple to figure out. It's in the Google App Store.
Yeah, this one I liked because it's digital, first of all, and secondly, I could get 2 screens on one on either side of the room. And the other thing I'll tell you about using Fast Clock is get your operations set up first the way you want them to, and then make the Fast Clock work for you. Don't try to be a slave to the Fast Clock.
Well, the Fast Clock tells you when the pizza is going to come.
Ryan, you've never set it up that way.
That's very true.
Did anybody else have a question?
Don, I found that instead of just switching car for car, with a little bit bigger scale, being an HO, I can read the car numbers, and I'm able to do my switch list by importing car numbers into it. But I have much shorter trains than you. My layout was designed for 5-car trains, so it really depends on the management of your layout and the size of your layout to go in what direction. That's what I'm thinking anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
I just designed the thing because I wanted to run long trains.
Right.
Really the whole
well,
thing.
I was going to ask Steven a question. I said, do you need your glasses to see the numbers?
Actually, I'm nearsighted, so I can take my glasses off, and I don't really even use optivisors. So
Okay, I was going to say, because if you need your glasses to read the road numbers, what if you break your glasses?
well, I tell you, my friend Steve Harris came up with these little guys. I don't know if you can see it. It's a little tiny flashlight, and if you use these guys, you can see any number anywhere. It's got a little LED on it. So that's my solution.
Okay.
One thing that the guys don't know yet is eventually we're going to do night operations. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, those little flashlights may come in handy then too.
They will.
Oh yeah.
I've got blue incandescent can lights in the ceiling, and it gives you enough room to see where you're going, but it also allows you to enjoy the lighting on the layout as well. So that's kind of cool. But eventually we're going to get the night ops too. So we'll run on a 24-hour clock.
Cool.
Don, I'm looking forward to operating on your layout, because that means two things have happened. One, you're ready for people to operate. Two, we're getting past COVID.
We got to get past COVID, of course, but I think that's coming. That's coming. And
then 3, you're going to have to shave your beard, because if you ruin anything on the layout, Don's not going to be too happy.
Well, the layout's probably fine, but he might get a car stuck in his beard.
That's what I was just thinking. I was thinking of the locomotive.
Yeah, what if a whole train gets stuck in there?
It's been a year since I've had a haircut or a beard trim.
Yeah, we know.
I'll shut up, but thank you for tuning in to watch this. And if you have any follow-up questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. But I've been having a lot of fun with this, thanks to the guys' support. And
Oh, good.